From our studios around the world, this is the Taste of Place podcast. Each month, we share stories from the keepers of culinary culture and heritage to spark ideas for your professional path or your next travel adventure. I'm your host, Eric Wolf. Thanks for listening.
What does it take to balance tourism growth, conservation, and community pride in one of the world's last truly wild places? In this episode, we travel to Chilean Patagonia with Mauricio Kusanovic, a tourism and conservation leader based in Puerto Natales, the gateway to Torres del Paine National Park. Mauricio shares a personal and professional perspective on how his family's legacy, rooted in cattle ranching, estancias, and early tourism, has evolved into a model that connects regenerative farming, conservation funding, and culinary identity. We explore how Puerto Natales gained international recognition for its food culture, why Patagonian lamb and cold water seafood matter, and how gastronomy helps protect land, wildlife, and local livelihoods. Mauricio also reflects on lessons learned and why better tourism, not more tourism, is essential for sensitive destinations. This conversation offers insight into destination governance, sustainable growth, and how food can express culture while supporting conservation in a place often called the end of the world, or as locals say, where everything begins. Mauricio, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me from Patagonia. It's a long way.
I think you are the first Chilean that we have had on our podcast.
It's an honor.
I was introduced to you by our association's ambassador in Chile, Dalma Diaz Pinto, who's a lovely woman. And we were looking for someone to be on the podcast from Chile, but we needed someone who spoke English because our listeners understand English. So it took us a while, but we finally found you.
Hopefully I'm up to the standards and happy to talk about what we do here.
Tell me a little bit about your area and how beautiful it is and about the food, because I don't know that a lot of our listeners know, but the area that you're from was culinary capital. It became a culinary capital a couple years ago, certified by our association, which means that you have really good food there. And I remember looking at some of the images of the food, and some of the seafood looks absolutely spectacular. So tell us about why your part of the world is so special.
First of all, Patagonia, it's in general, a lot of people have heard about what it is, or they have some idea, but it's this place in the world that is still wild, pristine, and we're almost like as close to Antarctica as you can get. So it's pretty far south. A lot of people say it's the end of the world. We actually say it's where everything begins. So it's just different ways of seeing it. And what's impressive about here, it's first of all, the nature, landscapes. Torres del Paine, for example, it's a national park that is just absolutely dramatic. It's just 3,000 meter high rock formations in 600,000 acres of national park. And that's only one small national park we have here in Patagonia. But it's the most visited. It's the one that people know. And it's just such a place still untouched by civilizations, you want to call it a little bit. It's common for us to go to different places and not see anyone walking around. And I grew up actually in a farm. And so the relationship I would say we have with nature, it's there. Sometimes we don't think about it that much, but when we go to Santiago or to other cities, I live in these amazing worlds full of fjords, mountains, glaciers, and so we valued it. And this is why people want to come see us, because it's worth it, totally worth it. And especially as big as the market tourism wise, it's United States. People want to come see this place and get to enjoy a little bit of this untouched nature.
Nice. And about the food?
The food, it's been something that's gained value this last 10 years, I would say. Because as every destination starts, we showcase the mountains, the big things, but the food actually, once you start learning what people like, the food is just part of the whole experience of coming to Patagonia. And there's such a diversity of things, starting from the lamb, for example. We're a region that started growing before the Panama Canal, because every ship in the world had to pass through the Strait of Magellan path, the strait. And so farming exploded, especially with the wars at that time. So there was a big company that started doing farming here, and now it continues all over the Patagonia. So the lamb here, it's something special. The food here, it's created like most of the meat that people have in the world comes from feedlot, right? And this is not something we like that much in general. Here, it's all freedom. So cows go around and they live. It's just they grassing normally, naturally, how they're supposed to be. Especially if you do a regenerative farming, which is something most people are doing here now, which is interesting how you can actually just help in this climate change. And the seafood, man, the seafood, it's just, there's a lot of people that don't eat it that much. The magallina meat, the potato, like very simple. But once we start having new knowledge in how to prepare things, there's such a kinds of seafood that grows here from the king's crab, which is one of the main crustaceans we have here, the Patagonian king's crab. The Chilean abalone, I don't know if this is very rare, not related to the Asian abalone, but it grows here and it's actually pretty big. The sea urchins and I don't know, like all this sea world from cold waters, which they're very rich in nature. So it's something people can come here, and now you have a lot of good restaurants and chefs that has come here and just started preparing all kinds of dishes.
I know you have a lot of good restaurants and chefs. From looking at the pictures when Puerto Natales submitted its application for culinary capitals, I thought, this seafood looks amazing. What changed for the community after Puerto Natales earned its certification? Did something change for the entrepreneurs there? What was the mood in the community, and how did things change after the certification?
It's Puerto Natales, actually, it's a town that lives off tourism. Okay, pretty much. Like most of the commerce you'll see, most of the entrepreneurs, they're related to tourism, whether it's the restaurants or a hotel, hostel, or they have a transportation company. Having the recognition, first of all, it's something I think we deserve for a certain long time. Puerto Natales is one of the places in Chile that has the most amount of restaurants per capita, per people that live in Puerto Natales. So it's a place in which people come to Torres and Paine. And why we have such an amount of restaurants and different kinds of restaurants, it's because of the tourism. There's no other way we would have had this kind of developed if it wouldn't be for people wanted to come and try new flavors and try the locals. And so I think, I don't know if something has changed, but now people in Puerto Natales, they believe a little bit more in themselves. They know they're doing a good job. They're recognized for it. So it's an encouragement for everyone to believe in what they're doing, because a lot of chefs, they start from nothing. They just have an idea or they have a concept and they just start cooking, sharing what they do for the people. And this is just something that, at least for every entrepreneur, should be proud of. We're a culinary spot that it's desirable for people from all over the world. And I can tell you, people that go to Puerto Natal, they've tried restaurants around the world. We don't have the spring breakers coming as a tourist. Like, we don't have the young people. People that come to Patagonia, they're experienced ones. They've traveled around. They've tasted different flavors. So having this recognition, being able to show all this to the world, it's an honor. And I think everyone that's very proud of gaining that recognition.
Your family has background in cattle ranching and tourism and now conservation. And I'm just wondering, how would you say that gastronomy plays a role in protecting the land and the people who depend on it?
As we always say, like you said, our family come from Croatia. 1905, 15 years old. My great grandfather, he just took a boat and arrived in Punta Arenas. 15 years old. I have a 14-year-old son, so I don't even. It just scares me to think that in a year he would have to go to the other place of the world in that time. But so for us, we come from the farming, right? We do cattle, and actually we do now regenerative farming, which is a little bit different from the normal one, at least the way you move the cattle and the impact you have on soil. And I think gastronomy, it's just an amazing tool for destination to showcase not only their products like they are, right? They're beautiful, they're rich in so many ways, but also to send a message. And it's actually at the hotel, we have Hotel Las Torres in Torres del Paine. And one of the things that make us more proud, there were one entrepreneur that started with us, and they started doing this bartender related to conservation. It's so in every drink, in terms of he would just send a message of conservation because the products they use. And the same thing happened with gastronomy. We have a garden that things grow right there. And so they have zero carbon footprint. All the lamb we have, it comes from regenerative farming. And the king's crab, it's like all the products we try to sell them can actually be just 200 miles from the hotel. And when you start preparing these dishes and with that, you add the storytelling and you add the how the community and how the destination actually what it's doing and all the initiatives regarding all that chain, because gastronomy just one part of it. There's a whole chain of production that relates to gastronomy. So I think it's just a great tool for promoting not just Patagonia but also the conservation we do with it.
Was your father the first one to get into tourism, or was that something that you decided to do?
No, it was actually my grandfather. He was a rancher, and in 1979, he had the possibility of buying this land in the middle of these rocks, which happens to be in the middle of Torres del Paine. So he bought this as an estancia, and we had cattle there until 2013. But it was until the early 90s that tourism started really pushing harder in the destination. At the beginning, it was just expeditionaries. So people that came to climb Las Torres, like the first one, that there was no good roads, good boats, good bridges, like no infrastructure. So my grandfather, he decided to build a nice little hotel, kind of like a hostel, but standards of today's, with a little restaurant. So that was one of the first tourism products we had, Hosteria Las Torres. That was in 1992. And from there, we just started learning and growing. We're in the middle of Torres del Paine. We started actually moving with the national park. So then it came better hotels. Then we came the refugios and campsites, and the whole operation now, which in I don't know, now it's 600 people working there, different campsites and refugios and hotels. And we turned everything to a reserve. We removed the cattle in 2013. So we turned this just for tourism and conservation. So yeah, it was my grandfather actually, the crazy one, the crazy farmer that thought he could actually just host tourists at that time.
So, how do you balance the legacy of that kind of country life with the demands of conservation, but also the increasing numbers of tourists arriving?
Oh,
How do you balance all of that?
that's a great question, man. And I'm glad you asked it because I think there's a word that glue everything together, which is management. I think destinations in general, destinations that have not doing so well or didn't plan things that well or have problems, there's some part of the management of that destinations are working. If we take our piece of reserve, so I think the goal for us, it's been having a good governance in terms of management and knowing what we want. We like tourism. Tourism is the best way to showcase any destination. It's a way you can fund conservation because that's another mistake a lot of people make. They start from conservation, but conservation is to be paid. Conservation is not free in general. If you want to have activities, if you want to reforestate, if you want to create and bring students, do anything that costs money. And I know so many institutions that they say they do conservation because they have the spirit, but they don't have fundings. And without fundings, you cannot do things because things cost money. So
Yeah.
once you match the conservation spirit with the production of sustainable tourism, which is it's also about showcasing the land and showcasing conservation. And when you use conservation, one of the main characteristic of the main added value for tourism, I think that's a winning match because that's a way you can actually, tourism can fund conservation and conservation can become one of the most important values of tourism. And we see it. There's one case, I think it's pretty obvious in Torres del Paine, which is recently, and which is the pumas in Torres del Paine, the mountain lion. They've been hunted for as long as I remember. In general, the estancias, there was always a conflict between the pumas and the farmers because if a puma kills you 10 or 20 sheep in one night, teaching their babies how to hunt, What do you expect from the farmer that has a living and has to provide for the family? So there was always a conflict. So there was somebody, actually, that was one of my uncles, Jose Antonio Kusanovic, that with his wife, Tamara, they actually started in this innovation in terms of the shepherd dogs, the Pyreneo dogs, and there's the Kangal. I think there's 2 or 3 races. They've been used for a long time in Europe, especially, and they're like, they just protect the sheep and they stay with the sheep. So they brought these dogs, and as today, they put 500 dogs in different estancias, and they have eliminated the problem with the farmer, because the puma doesn't get close to a herd or to a bunch of sheep that has a dog that moves around. And the other thing that changed is that a puma, it's much worth, a photo of the puma, it's worth so much more than a puma with a bullet. And that just tourism made possible also the change. Once you come with tourists and you go see the pumas and you take pictures of them, there's an incentive to keep doing that. And it is an incentive to protect the puma. There's a whole economy that moves around the puma tracking experience. And I think we've understood that. Well, with all these little things, now you can say Torres del Paine, and it's the place in the world that has the most amount of pumas per hectare within the national park. And there's an economy actually that works actually much in the wintertime, which is a place which is, we have a bell, right? Wintertime is very low for us. But in this case, this not only helps every farmer with the shepherd dogs or the whole tourism community taking pictures of pumas and everything, but also we want to protect the puma because it's a source of development for the community and all year around. So I think it's management, one of the keys if you want to match destination and put all these things together.
So, relating to the management, would you say that there have been any kind of trade-offs or problems that you faced when you're trying to balance conservation with development?
There's always situations in which you have to follow your vision, I think. People that don't have a vision that's strong or don't have a purpose in terms of what they're doing, they can just sometimes move and get away a little bit from some things. But once you know what you want, once you know you want to protect this place, when you put some limit, there's always some boundaries you have to carry. It's impossible to bring, I don't know, 20 times more tourists to a place that doesn't hold that kind of tourists, right? I'd rather better tourists that spend more money in the destination, that buy local products than quantity. And there's certain tourists that we don't want. At least for now, we don't need them because they don't really support the local community. There's always trade-off. And as a young destination, I think we've learned. There was certain time the national park didn't have many rules, for example, for camping. So I'll give you an example. 2015, you didn't need a reservation to go camping in Torres del Paine. So what happened? Everyone was going to camp and they didn't plan, so they just arrived. So every campsite in the national park collapsed a little bit because they had no idea how many people were coming every day. So there was a rule then, after we did some conversations, there was a rule. There was a certain amount of people that can camp in each campsite, which seems normal now, but at that time, that was still an innovation at least. And you need a reservation to enter the national park if you want to stay within. So that kind of thing, it's how you start managing the amount of tourists, destination, and trade-offs. There's everyday trade-off. You can have it all. You can have millions and millions of tourists and take care of everything and then providing good services. You have to pick what you want, and I think that's also part of management and vision.
So related to that, so you're a leader in the local association of hotels. How are you able to manage the competing interests? So you've got small operators, big resorts, conservationists, the local residents. How can you manage these different interests to keep the vision for the region unified?
Yeah. I'll say I'm part of it. I'm part of this ecosystem of tourism associations trying to do a good job. And so in my experience, we have one thing that's still good for us in terms like we're still far away from the numbers we should be receiving. Yeah, we're still on new destinations. And Torres del Paine, you have 300,000 people entering. And now the problems we've had is because we have two trails that host all the tourism dynamics, for example, in a huge national park. We only use less than 5% of the national park in terms of occupancy, right? So there's still, in Puerto Natales, there's so many other beautiful places around it, and people that started estancias, that started moving towards tourism, creating new trails, biking experiences, etc. So I think we're still in a stage in which we've tried to promote the destination, right? Still, we can still receive more tourists, better tourists, right? But in terms of, I think one of the best help we've given to the destination, it's the conversation with the public sector. Because sometimes the public sector is just not talking to the private sector in general. The public, they're in their minds thinking sometimes, I don't know what. And we are the locals inside the mountains, managing campsites and refugios, and just knowing what you want. When you come to Torres del Paine, we're going to host you, we're going to give you an experience. So all that knowledge, once you give it to the people, especially when you have centralized management in terms of public figure, right? Because most of the decisions, they're made in Santiago. And sometimes they have really no idea what's going on within the national park or inside or with the local community. So having all those views and putting that on the table, I think it's been pretty interesting. And the other thing is just really try to have a collaboration. I would say a spirit. Always, we're a hotel association in Torres del Paine. I'm also part of the tourism association in Puerto Natales. I'm also part of the one in Punta Arenas, which is Austro Chile. There's many others that are just hotels and restaurants. So everyone gets together by their interests. So one of the key if you want to be a destination that it's evolving and just innovating, it's being able to talk, being able to agree in the main visions of what you want. Sometimes it's defending yourself from some law that in Santiago got approved that doesn't apply to us, and just it's hard. Sometimes it's just promoting the destinations and coming up with new ideas on how to do things. Sometimes it's helping the government to target the right market, because in that we're good in terms of marketing, knowing what we want, which segments we're going to go to, where to put our money, which don't have that much compared to a destination. But we want to go to this market here and there. Having a collaboration, collaborating, I think that's just key. And and I think we're doing a good job, at least. Magallanes, the region, it's very organized in terms of tourism. And I think that's part of the success also.
So as the destination grows in popularity and more people are discovering it, conservationists are going to argue that tourism and even sustainable forms of tourism are always going to change the ecosystem. They're always going to change the local culture. So what would you say to those critics, and what kind of safeguards would you put in place to mitigate that risk?
I would say, the first thing I always say, the humans are part of the ecosystem in general. So there's some conservationists that they want to just remove the human from the whole equation.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Tourism without the tourists.
Yeah. So first of all, we are part of it. We are nature, and we have to just live with all this in this amazing place. So how do we manage that? And there's, like I said, tourism, it's one of the main source of income for any conservation activities you want to have. So if you want to really protect the place, what we say is spring tourism. And of course, when we say tourism, it's sustainable tourism. It's in a certain way. Like, it's not, we're still so far away from massive tourism. Even with the pressures that sometimes we get, we're just so far away from Venice, so far away from Cancun, so far away, from all these places that they have this massive tourism. And I mean, we get 300,000 people a year in Torres del Paine. Those numbers for Yellowstone or for some cities, it's just, they get that in one day probably, or in just 1 week. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is, again, management in general. We need to diversify our offer. That's one of the things we've tried to talk a lot with the government. It's like, I don't think it's reasonable now that we use only 5% of the national park, and there's 95% of the territory that is just close to tourists. And I think if we open up that a little bit, let's go 10%, we can just use a little bit more of the park. And you said, like I said, tourism can come with so many activities regarding conservation. And one thing we know, if you leave a place just by its own and no one takes care of it, there's other problems that come with it. Problems related even to local communities. We don't have that much here in Magallanes, but in Santiago or in the north of Chile, if you leave a land untouched and then no one goes there, everything, it gets taken by people and you start seeing houses appearing. You start seeing all kinds of other problems that for us, that just confirms that once you put the land in use, once you take care of it, you put sustainable tourism, you put some management and addition, it's so much better than just not doing anything. And of course, you always have to measure how many tourists you want to bring, and you have to know. That's another thing. You have to know some dynamics in order to manage the place. If I don't know that in that mountain there's a condor's nest, and the condors from all over the Andes come here, I don't know, and they have their little babies there, everything. If I don't know their dynamics, sure, I may do some things that can damage that. But once I know, so science also comes into place. But science, guess what? It costs money. You have to pay the scientists to do things and investigation. So, like I said, tourism, conservation, the science world, and even the educational side also, we'll put it into the picture. And I think once you put all that together with a certain vision of destination, I think we can manage. And so far, we don't have that many problems like that. But yeah, sometimes it requires to say, okay, stop. This is it. This is the amount of people we want to have in this trail. And so, yeah, and it's just part of making that decision.
So let's turn the conversation to Mauricio personally. And I'd like to know, in your career, have you ever made a big mistake or had a failure? And if so, what did you learn from it?
I think
You
not
haven't made
just
any
one,
mistakes.
not just one. I would say many mistakes, and I'll say personally, and also we in Torres Paine, we manage a little park within the national park, right? It's just this land, this privately protected land now, and it's always a try and error. Sometimes, like I said, we came to tourism not knowing anything about tourism. No, and then we started just by hard and a lot of effort, and just it was an estancia. So on the way, on the process, many mistakes have been made, and especially in terms of infrastructure. What's the best thing to do? Manage how to receive the tourists there. So I think in every time we've been improved. It's over 35 years we've done tourism in Torres Paine. So I think now we can have a very clear view of things, how to do things, how to live in the mountains. It's not that, there's a lot of things people don't know, how to live the winters there, how to treat the staff, etc. In that sense, many mistakes we've made as a family, but I think the spirit has been always to correct what we can and just try to improve and make it better. So I think that's a good thing. Personally, yeah, I've made some mistakes. I remember one thing I did, which was still one of the best learnings I have. It was I had a restaurant in Puerto Natales, actually, and it was called Ancestros Patagonia. And it was a restaurant. I convinced my mother to be my partner. So we opened up this restaurant. We bought a house. We bought an amazing kitchens. We spent a lot of money into this restaurant that was a dinner show. So we showcased a whole experience about the Selknam and the way they do things. We hired like 9 or 10 artists, like dancers, professional dancers, so they can just recreate these scenes they had when they became men, some solos. And it was actually beautiful. If you search Ancestros Patagonia's dinner show Puerto Natales, you may see some of the videos. It was for 40 people, That was the first mistake. It was only for 40 people at one seat table, but it was a whole experience. So, and what happened there? First of all, I overinvested for sure. For 40 people, I didn't need that kitchen, or I didn't need so many things. It was one menu. The menu also was a part of the whole storytelling. And we started in a certain age, then we moved toward the more contemporary time. And it was absolutely beautiful. And there was a 360 video within the building. So you enter to a forest. I'm still paying that project because what happened is just it didn't work out. Maybe it was my first time opening a restaurant. Maybe I overinvested in the kitchen and in the house and in everything. Maybe I did too many discounts for too long. I don't know, because it's a great project for me. I think it's still one of the best tourism products I've been to. But in terms financially, it was not. We hold for 2 seasons and then we can hold anymore. And that was something first of all, I gained a lot of respect for restaurant owners because it's much easier to say it than doing it. It's not just providing a good something. It has to be warm. It has to be the right time. It has to come out. It's so many variables that I didn't know before that could have gone wrong in the whole experience. And so the waitress and how they treat you, if you had a good time, you had a bad time, the mood you are, I don't know, so many things. So I have a great respect now for restaurant owners. I don't think I'll have a new restaurant myself. But and the other thing is, you have to love what you do, but just be careful to fall in love with your ideas. Because when you fell in love with your ideas and you don't put some objective numbers on the table and you just invest and just don't care, you don't do the math. So every time you have an idea, I follow a lot of people and they say, hey man, if you have an idea, just compete that idea with other 10 more ideas and see which one's better. Then put the numbers to it. And numbers and a business plan, it's key to not just go blind to a market that sometimes you don't know. And I think I fell in love with my idea. And in general, I just wanted to do this, wanted to showcase the natives here and the dance. It was an amazing product, but it didn't work out. I think.
Well,
It
there's
was
nothing wrong with being in love with your idea. That's totally okay. But maybe the lesson here is to not bite off more than you can chew.
Sure.
And take things one day at a time. Yeah.
No, and do the work. Be professional. It's a business. If you want to have a restaurant or anything for yourself or your amusement or because you like it, great. But if you want to have a business, there's certain rules that you have to do. And doing a business plan, being financially responsible, knowing how much you're going to invest, and that's just part of doing the work. It comes with the idea. It comes with all the beauty. It comes all this background that has to be done if you want it to be successful. If not, sometimes it might get complicated.
Indeed. Well, let's look forward to the future now. Let's say that the year is 20. What does your part of Patagonia look like?
It's going to look the same. It's going to look similar, but in terms of feeling. In 20 years from now, what we're going to have, we're going to see Puerto Natales growing for sure. In 2030, we're going to have an airport. Yeah, in 2030, we're going to have an airport that's going to be 10 times bigger than the one we have right now. So that's gonna change a lot of things. A lot of people don't realize yet, but we've seen other destinations like Calafate that didn't have an airport, and now they have one, a big one, and that just changed dynamics in terms of how many people can actually go there. So we'll see Puerto Natales growing. There's more offer now in terms of land you can buy to have your house, living in nature. There's also some challenge. Natales growing means they're gonna need a better infrastructure, better water system, sewage system, etc. We're having trouble as we speak now. And Puerto Natales, there's 20,000 people living there. Okay, now I don't know how things would be with 30,000 people living there, or I don't know, or even more. So all those challenges is things we're gonna have to talk about with the local authorities and see. But in terms of national parks, I really hope we're going to just diversify. We couldn't grow with what we have right now. I don't see that happening because we don't want that happening. but we can grow if we diversify trails, hotels. There's 2 or 3 big hotels now. They're gonna start working Torres del Paine. That means a lot of investment in marketing, in showcasing Patagonia. I think it's gonna keep growing. I think we can do that. We can still grow with not that many problems, but we do need to diversify and create more offer in terms on the nature. Use the fjords, have better infrastructure, have more trails, new national parks, etc.
Sounds like good. So, wrapping up here, last question for you. If you could go back and give advice to a younger Mauricio, a younger version of yourself, what would you tell yourself?
That's a good question, man. What can I say to myself? No, but I would say just to be patient, maybe. Be patient because, yeah, things don't happen overnight, especially in conservation or tourism or managing a destination. And like, I remember my aunt, she's been one of the leaders of the family. And we saw a little note from a meeting we had with the government or with the national park administrator. And she was reading the notes and she asked me, like, when all these issues, this is from where? Because it seems like it was the same meeting she had 20 years ago. Some things take time. And if you're not patient, you're going to have a bad time. And you have to just persist all the time, persist. Even though it seems like most of the meetings we do, especially with the authorities, sometimes you don't know if it's a good meeting or not. You don't know if it's going to happen something or not. Some things you need to change a law in order to happen. But no, every step counts. And I think every effort is important. So I would just say, man, be patient. Don't give up. Especially when you talk about developing a destination, because it's slow. Doesn't happen overnight. But persistence is the key.
I'm like you, I'm impatient. And even as a younger version of Eric, I'd be thinking 10 years ahead, right? And not really waiting for or wanting to wait for others to catch up. And I guess I probably would have told myself, we need to be on this journey together. You can't do it all yourself. Maybe spend more time investing in explaining your vision so people can buy into it. Because I think that maybe I put my ideas out there and I knew where I was going, but no one else knew.
I remember a visit when we went to see a national park system in Canada. And we were talking to the ones in charge of the national park, the private sector, had hotels, etc. And one of the questions we said to him was like, what's the relationship with the national park administrator? Like, how do you do things? How do you move forward in Canada? And he said something that I think it's interesting. He said, it's amazing what you can do when you give someone else the credit. And you know what? I've used that a lot. Sometimes, and when I apply that here, just bring people, involve more people. Just not just be yourself and get the credit because you're great or everything. Hey, just give the credit to someone else. Just bring more people to the project or so you can all be a force for better, right? And it's a key. At least in destination, in management and growing everything. If you don't make the community part of it, if you don't make the private sector part of it, or even the public sector, things are much harder. It's important to involve people, like you said.
I like that. Give others the credit.
All the credits. It's amazing how you move forward much faster. And hey, do you care for the credit or you care for the result? And most of the time,
result. Exactly. Yeah,
it's the result. So it was a good advice, and I use it all the time.
Excellent. Mauricio, thank you so much for your time today. It's a high season for you right now, so I'm sure you're super busy, but thanks for taking the time to speak with us and look forward to visiting you one day in your beautiful part of the world.
Thank you for having me, and great to talk about all these things. Like you said, it's high season. There's a lot of tourists that visit the national park, and now we're just actually thinking for the next season. But to be honest, in terms of for this season, the cards have been laid down. Like we know what's gonna happen. Like reservations are okay, but it's next season that we started working on, winter season, etc., etc. So everyone is invited now for this if they can get on a spot in any hotel. But if not, for next season, it's an absolutely beautiful place. You have to see it, a bucket list destination for sure.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Mauricio.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of the Taste of Place podcast. This episode is brought to you by the World Food Travel Association and its Taste of Place movement. We'd like to hear from you. We invite you to share your ideas, questions, and thoughts about the podcast by contacting us through our website, or you can connect with us and comment about the show on major social media platforms. Special thanks to our guest Mauricio Kusanovic, and our sincerest thanks to you for joining us. We wish you a safe, happy, and productive month ahead.